The major arcana of the Tarot conceal a secret level of adept understanding. It is a level that speaks to the process that underlies everything, but it is conveyed through allegory, and it is very well hidden. While arcana means secret, I have never seen anyone give a satisfactory, comprehensive adept overview of the complete process that is concealed in allegory in the trumps, which is the most valuable secret they contain. What will be shown here is not a deeper level of divination in the way the Tarot is normally used, but what the major arcana actually conceals is the process for divinization, the process for becoming divine. The illuminatory process is the same for humans on a psychospiritual level in effective theurgy work as it is for real alchemy when applied on the operative level in genuine laboratory alchemy. I am going to reveal here, trump by trump, the full process on both levels of theurgy and alchemy for each of the major arcana. We're going to jump right in, but there are 4 important notes before we do that should help make this information more useful. This video is meant to convey practical information, and by practical I mean the information should be of use to any sincere aspirant who wishes to understand and apply the information here within a genuine initiatory framework for psychospiritual development on a theurgy level, as well as for anyone attempting to understand genuine alchemy and its nature as the divine mother science. The alchemy that is concealed in the sequences of the major arcana is what I refer to as generative alchemy, top-down alchemy, where the pure philosophical elements are generated from prima materia. This will be different from how most people attempt to approach laboratory alchemy, through what I refer to as process alchemy, bottom-up alchemy. The differences in these processes is explained fully in Alchemy Unveiled, which I've made available for free download using the link at the top of the video description below. I've made my master process map for non-dual theurgy and alchemy available for download and study in the post section of the main channel profile. That diagram's link is also in the description below. There are secret keys related to the lesser-known short path in alchemy that are concealed in between keys to the more often discussed long path. They are not at all obvious for what they mean on a practical level, but they will be pointed out along the way. They don't show up until near the end of the major arcana, so stick around and see what they are. So now, let's get to the heart of what the major arcana conceal. The Fool. In theurgy, the Fool trump represents the non-initiate before initiatory theurgy training is begun. In alchemy, the Fool trump represents the unrecognized prima materia that is everywhere and never seen. People have come up with all manner of fabulous things to say about the Fool card to make that condition sound more elevated than it is. But from an adept point of view, it is simply a non-initiate. It doesn't mean non-initiates have no life wisdom. It means they do not possess specific understanding of initiatory wisdom concealed allegorically within the major arcana. For the rest of the trumps, there are sequences of illuminatory levels from aspirant to initiate, adept, and master. Trumps 1 through 5. They are the pure isolated states of consciousness themselves for theurgy and pure isolated philosophical elements in alchemy. Trumps 6 through 10. They are the combinations that result from overlapping states of consciousness in initiatory theurgy and obtaining the stone of the first degree in alchemy. This level is where genuine initiation is attained in either alchemy or theurgy. Trumps 11 through 17 represent the results of those combinations in adept levels of the work for both psychospiritual development and alchemical progression. Trumps 18 through 21. They are the final adept application of all cumulative progression in theurgy and alchemy to step into the evolutionary level of becoming a full master. We start with the pure isolated states of consciousness and alchemical elements. The Magician. In theurgy, the magician is the conscious mind, the embryonic lower masculine, extended from the higher masculine, the aspect of psyche that functions as the baseline seat of consciousness and the lower will. In Hebrew Kabbalah, this is the Ruach. The magician in alchemy is soul, the sun, elemental fire, referred to as the king, sulfur, and red mercury. It is the second elemental progression from the prima materia in generative alchemy. The priestess. In Theurgy, the priestess is the unconscious mind, the embryonic lower feminine extended from the higher feminine, the aspect of psyche that stores all images from experience and the unfiltered conclusions of the conscious thinking mind. In Hebrew Kabbalah, this is the Nefesh. The priestess in alchemy is Luna, the moon, elemental water, referred to as the queen, Mercury, and white Mercury. It is the first elemental progression from the prima materia in generative alchemy. The Empress. In Theurgy, the Empress is the contracted baseline subconscious mind, the divine feminine, the divine mother, an aspect of the pure divine level. It is also the level of consciousness that holds the blueprint of our current incarnation, which is the etheric body. In Hebrew Kabbalah, this is the Neshama. The Empress in alchemy is the Saturnian earth that is one of the two philosophical elements generated from the conjunction of Luna and Sol, the conjunction of elemental water and elemental fire. The Emperor. In Theurgy, the Emperor is the contracted baseline, superconscious mind, the divine masculine, the star father, an aspect of the pure divine level. In Hebrew Kabbalah, this is the Chia. The Emperor in alchemy is the elemental air, or heaven. That is the second concurrent philosophical element generated from the conjunction of Luna and Sol, the conjunction of elemental water and elemental fire. The Hierophant. In Theurgy, the Hierophant represents the higher genius as the state of unified consciousness. In Hebrew Kabbalah, this is the Yechidah. The Hierophant in alchemy represents the quintessence, the proper conjunction of all four philosophical elements into the fifth element, the four elements being made into one thing. From here, we proceed to combinations of overlapping states of consciousness, or combinations of isolated elements. The Lovers. In Theurgy, the Lovers represent the beginning of the process between the conscious mind, the lower masculine, and the unconscious mind, the lower feminine, that brings them into balance and coherence under the auspices of the divine feminine, which begins to allow direct expanded access of the divine masculine. The Lovers in alchemy represent the circulation of Sol and Luna, encountered previously as the magician and priestess, as the philosophical red and white Mercuries, that after a period of courtship go through what we call the lesser marriage of the sun and the moon, the lesser conjunction. The Chariot. In Theurgy, the Chariot represents the consciousness of the aspirant in initiatory training that has developed intimate awareness of all functional aspects of the psyche and brought interaction with them under a greater level of conscious control. This juncture marks the beginning of knowledge and conversation with the higher genius, and the point in which an aspirant becomes a genuine initiate in the mysteries and commences upon levels of adept work. The Chariot in alchemy is being in full possession of all philosophical elements that can be used as building blocks in various combinations to confect specific alchemical substances required for adept levels of the work. It is the capacity to start working the full alchemy process from application of the proper materials, to combine and circulate the elements that will result in a stone of the first degree, from which one proceeds to deeper levels of adept work. Strength. In Theurgy, strength represents expansion of subconscious mind, divine feminine, the Empress, through extended rounds of deeper levels of adept work in the continued overlapping of the balanced states of consciousness. The state of consciousness, when fully developed, is key to the entire work. Without it, divinization and illumination would not be possible. In alchemy, strength is the Empress in full power, the elemental Saturnian earth generated from the conjunction of Sol and Luna, the alchemical king and queen, elemental fire, and water. In alchemy, this Saturnian earth holds the most radical fire and contains great reserves of stored power, thus concealed as strength. The Hermit. In Theurgy, the hermit is the expansion of access to superconscious mind, divine masculine, the emperor, through the agency of expanded divine feminine, strength. In alchemy, the hermit is the emperor in full power, the elemental air, heaven, generated from the conjunction of Sol and Luna, the alchemical king and queen, elemental fire, and water. In alchemy, this elemental air holds the most radical moisture and contains great but elusive power, thus concealed as the hermit. It is rarefied, and in many configurations it is hard to obtain and store, particularly in a liquid state. Fortunately for us, as a higher octave of the emperor, the hermit holds secrets to other processes within the royal art, which we will come to later. Fortune. In Theurgy, fortune represents the work begun at the chariot, coming to development as access to full and unobstructed knowledge and conversation with the higher genius. In alchemy, the work begun with possession of all philosophical elements from the chariot has progressed to the first degree of the stone, from which the alchemist may generate first-degree elixir to facilitate coming into alignment and further degrees of progress with the work. It is at the level of fortune that the theurgist and alchemist both have everything they require, and essentially all that is left is doing deeper levels of the work. Now we progress to the results of the combinations from the previous level, where alchemy and theurgy begin to blend. Justice. In Theurgy, justice represents living in alignment with one's higher genius. Hints from other cultures are the justified men in the lore of the British Isles, as well as in Celtic culture, the lore of those who possess the tongue that cannot lie. In alchemy, justice as an archetype is what begins development after ingestion of elixir from the stone that brings one into alignment with one's higher genius. The Hanged Man. In Theurgy, the Hanged Man is the full reversal of consciousness that results from the continuous reversing of the mind, as discussed in Keys to Initiatory Theurgy, for key number 2, related to allegory. In alchemy, the Hanged Man is the result of ingestion of the elixir from the stone, achieved at the level of fortune, and begins a spiritual fermentation process, just as is catalyzed by the reversal of consciousness in Theurgy work. Death. In Theurgy, the death trump is the state of philosophical death that results from intense reversal of consciousness that puts the psyche through levels of separation and purification. In alchemy, death is separation and putrefaction of working materials. Though in the generative alchemy we are primarily discussing, death represents the beginning of the final transformation sequence of Sol and Luna proper into the philosophical elements of Saturnian earth and air, or heaven. Temperance. Temperance in Theurgy is the rebalancing after the state of philosophical death, as one is reintegrating changes in the reconfigured psyche that now has increased access to the divine levels. Temperance in generative alchemy is the continued circulation of philosophical elements of fire and water, evolving Sol and Luna through the appropriate degrees of fire that precipitates the progression of the elements to advanced levels as elemental, Saturnian earth, and air, or heaven. The Devil. In Theurgy, the devil trump represents the full permanent state of being spiritually androgyne as a result of the lesser conjunction, a process started in the lovers. Male and female are now depicted as chained because Sol and Luna have been transformed into androgynous Saturnian earth. Attainment of this illuminatory state makes one a child of Saturn. The devil trump in alchemy represents the pure philosophical element of Saturnian earth, the generative result of the full conjunction of elemental fire and water. Elemental Saturnian earth holds the deepest level of radical fire, and holds the transformational power of the final philosopher's stone. The Tower. In Theurgy, the tower is the result of consciousness being reconfigured from the lesser conjunction. Whatever was in the way or out of alignment from the lower levels of consciousness is completely cleared as any significant dysfunctions in the psyche are purified and the individual ego is more fully sublimated. The tower in alchemy is the death of the king and queen, the result of Sol and Luna being reconfigured into elemental Saturnian earth and elemental air, heaven, as a generative function of the lesser conjunction. The star. The star in Theurgy represents a clear, fully forged connection with a higher genius as the seat of consciousness is fully shifted into the higher divine functions. The star in the stone is able to become more fully expressed within the physical body on an immanent level, because all significant energetic obstructions have been cleared by the tower process. The star trump in alchemy represents the pure philosophical element of air, or heaven. In generative alchemy, it is obtained at the same time as Saturnian earth, as a result of the full conjunction of elemental fire and water. Elemental air, heaven, holds the deepest level of radical moisture and holds the multiplication power of the final philosopher's stone. Now we progress to the final processes, where complete evolution of these processes culminates in full illumination and the generation of the stellar body of light, the moon. In Theurgy, the moon trump represents the exalted lunar consciousness in full function as the Holy Ghost, the etheric body. The full ability to use this capacity is catalyzed at the event of the lesser conjunction. The Holy Ghost is the body used to consciously enter and navigate the underworld. In generative alchemy, the moon trump represents the exalted lunar as the white elixir, generated from applying philosophical white mercury, Luna, onto Saturnian earth. This creates solid forms of the philosopher's salt and philosopher's mercury, which is a secret key to obtaining solid forms of the white elixir when liquid forms are more difficult to obtain or hold. The white elixir, when ingested, catalyzes and empowers the etheric body to its full function as the Holy Ghost. The sun. In Theurgy, the sun trump represents the exalted solar consciousness and the robe of glory that adorns the etheric body, and is the glory discussed in the Emerald Tablet. The embryonic use of this exalted solar consciousness is catalyzed at the event of the lesser conjunction, but attaining the full conscious use of it is not immediate. It requires ongoing adept work to empower it fully. The robe of glory, the exalted solar body, is the garment donned by the Holy Ghost to consciously enter and navigate the overworld, heaven. In generative alchemy, the exalted solar is the red elixir, obtained from applying philosophical red mercury, Sol, onto Saturnian earth. This creates forms of philosopher's sulfur, which is a secret key to obtaining solid forms of the red elixir, when liquid forms are more difficult to obtain or use in certain processes. The red elixir, when ingested, catalyzes and empowers the robe of glory to its full function. Judgment. In Theurgy, the judgment trump is the beginning of the process of the greater conjunction, the resurrection, the merging of exalted moon, the Holy Ghost, as the fully empowered underworld body, with the exalted sun, the robe of glory, as the fully empowered overworld body. In generative alchemy, the judgment trump is the beginning of the greater conjunction, the process to conjunct the exalted lunar, the white elixir, and exalted solar, the red elixir, to confect the philosopher's stone as the elixir of life. The world. In Theurgy, the world or universe trump represents the completion of the greater conjunction as the stellar body of light, as the Holy Ghost puts on the robe of glory and steps completely into the next level of personal evolution in full and divine individuation. The transcendent star in the stone is now made fully immanent. In generative alchemy, the world or universe trump is the completion of the philosopher's stone as the greater conjunction in alchemy, the quintessence from which the elixir of life is created and used to generate the stellar body of light as a final stage of human evolutionary capacity to reach full individuation. Thank you for watching all the way to the end of this video. I hope you found something insightful and practical towards understanding the deeper levels of allegory encoded in the Major Arcana. In the near future, in addition to ongoing content on illumination through the Western mysteries, I will be doing an entire deep dive series on each of the Major Arcana. So please subscribe to this channel now and activate your notifications for new content. Also, if you have not done so yet, please use the link in the description below to get a free instant download of Alchemy Unveiled.